Negotiating repairs can be one of the most emotionally charged aspects of the real estate transaction, and setting appropriate expectations is key. There are a lot of factors that go into negotiating repairs, and it's often emotionally charged on both sides. The seller loves their home, they probably have a hard time seeing it objectively, and they often want to spend little money on a house that they're leaving. On the other side of it, the buyer is making a huge investment and they want the home to be in good shape. The negotiations can be a bit of a dance, but having clear expectations on both sides can help. Let's talk about seller expectations first. Deferred maintenance will come back to bite you. Being proactive about repairs before the house ever hits the market is the best bet. When a buyer gets a 98-page inspection report, getting to the closing table gets a lot trickier. No one wants to invest in a landmine. And the more problems that show up on an inspection report, the pickier a buyer tends to get. Once the inspection report comes back, my advice to the seller is to be reasonable and try to take emotion out of it. You don't want to create bad blood with the buyer. Here are some things to consider. Are these reasonable requests? If the HVAC system isn't functioning, that's a reasonable request. Everybody in Texas needs air conditioning. And if this deal falls through, that same problem will come up on the next inspection report. Don't get upset by small requests. Look at the requests as a whole. For example, if somebody's asking you to replace a switch plate cover, you might want to consider it. It's a 25-cent job that will take about 5 minutes. But it will depend on the rest of the request and how crazy it's getting. In every transaction, there's give and take, but there are also boundaries. Another thing to consider, if these repairs aren't done, will there be issues with financing? We'll talk about that in a minute. What will you lose if this deal falls through? Different scenarios create different negotiations. If your house just went on the market, you have 20 offers right out of the gate, an executed backup contract, then you might be less willing to negotiate on some of those repairs. However, if your house has been on the market for 60 days and this is your first offer, you may be willing to be a little more generous with the repair negotiations. And don't lose sight of what you're getting as a seller. If a buyer is paying you $30,000 over asking, my advice to sellers is to show some generosity in return and be fair with repair requests. I touched on the financing, and this is an important factor. A lender can't require that a buyer or seller make repairs to a property, but they can refuse to finance the property if those repairs aren't done. And since financing is involved in the majority of transactions, those repair items should be top of mind for a seller. Lender-required repairs usually have to do with the safety, soundness, and security of a property. Now let's tackle the buyer side. My recommendation is to be reasonable, but to request things that are important to you. When first looking at the inspection report, I ask my clients to make 3 lists: musts, wants, and unimportant. You can ask for absolutely anything in the repair requests, but you should know that there are certain things that are never going to get covered, and asking for the moon can create an instant shutdown in sellers. I've adopted the saying of one of my fellow agents, and that's this: the first list is the only list. Rather than going back and forth, taking away items, adding more, it's best to come up with one important list and negotiate on that. Decide up front what the deal breakers are, if any, and decide what you're willing to let go. You also need to decide if you need all of those repairs completed prior to closing, or if you would be willing to accept a credit at closing. There's a fine line for buyers in repair negotiations, especially in a seller's market. However, if you're paying huge sums of money for a house, which who isn't in this market, or you've paid well over asking, I feel like it's okay to get a little specific with repair requests. However, you have to know your situation. If you were one of 25 offers and you know that the sellers have an executed backup offer just waiting to go, you are not going to have the same ability to negotiate. You need to know your boundaries and know your situation. There are a lot of factors that play into repair negotiations for both buyers and sellers, but one phrase can help on both sides: be fair. If you're looking to buy or sell a house in the Dallas-Fort Worth market, I'd love to talk to you about the market trends. You can find my contact information in the description below.